Has anyone had a celebrity NSFW encounter? What's your story? Met Gary Busey at an airport in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Through a strange course of conversation in which he insulted nearly everyone, he ended with a joke. Gary, did you ever hear about the poor family? Me, no. Gary, they were so poor, they had to jerk off the dog to feed the cat. He then chuckled to himself, grabbed the next taxi, and left us speechless. Formatting. Friend was pissing next to Shaq at a club in Miami. Of course he can't keep his eyes on the road, and tried to sneak a peek at Shaq's junk. Shaq turns to him, smiles and says crazy right. Big N.I.A., regular dick. Friend of ours is a hotel hospitality manager. She was alone in a room with Russell Brand. He very politely offered to have sex with her. She said her husband was waiting downstairs for her. Brand said he could come up too. I live in New York City. We normally ignore celebs, but one time I walked past David Blaine. I shouted, "Do a magic trick." He replied, "Try finding your deck." That's magic too. I walked away in silence. In early 2013, a female friend and I went to an after party that Donald Glover Childish Gambino was jing at after one of his concerts in Sydney. After his DJ set, we were smoking outside when Donald exits the venue through a side door. We looked over at him, and he immediately approaches us and introduces himself. Right from the get-go, my friend starts flirting with him hard. He asks us if we had any weed. We did, and he invited us back to his hotel to smoke with him. We ended up on the balcony of his hotel suite along with a couple of other guys smoking a blunt. My friend is all over him. I've never seen her try so hard to get with a guy. I could tell from pretty early on that he wasn't into it at all. He was staring off into the distance and ignoring her or responding with one-word answers. After about half an hour, he stands up and says, "I'm going to bed." My friend asks him if she should come, to which he looks her dead in the eye and says, "I honestly don't give a frick what you do," and walks off. We left soon after that. About a year later, I read an interview with him where he said that he tried to kill himself on that Australian tour. In hindsight, the way he was acting definitely seemed like someone who was depressed. Back in 2003, I worked at the Best Buy in Westwood, Akla, store 327. It's no longer there, but we'd get famous people in from time to time. Jessica Alba bought 2 Xboxes from me, told my manager I was great. Christina Aguilera came in a few times. Anyhow, this was back in my weed smoking prime, and basically only CA had incredible strains like Ogkush. One night we're closing up, and 2 guys are playing Madden on the store's box or PlayStation, and it was Snoop and Method Man. I told them we were closing, and they were very friendly and polite, so I said, "Hey guys, I'll be outside in like 10 minutes, if you want. I got some Ogkush, if you want to smoke. I have an Oldsmobile Alero, gold color in the lot." They leave, I walk out, and sure enough Snoop and Method Man are parked next to my car. So I got high as frig with 2 legends and went home. I was 18 and on vacation at the Atlantis in the Bahamas. It was at night, and my friend and I were exploring the grounds. A big black limo pulled up near the main entrance, and Ventura Mini-Me stepped out with a beautiful woman and a few big-built bodyguards. My friend and I were like, we gotta get a picture with him." So we asked him politely, and he said yes, but only one. So my friend stood on his left, and I stood on his right, and the bodyguard took the pic. Disposable camera days. While the picture was being taken, Vern had his left hand firmly planted on her ass, and the right hand firmly planted on mine. He was pinching so hard, I guess I can't blame him, as our asses are our level for him. So yeah, TLDR, Mini-Me got to cop a feel on myself and a friend in the Bahamas. I asked Winona Ryder out to lunch on an elevator. She said she had to work. I always tell myself she didn't say no. I was in a very massive men's room at a venue taking a piss. I was about 15 urinals deep, and bathroom was completely empty as far as I could tell besides me. In walks Jack Black. He walks right up to the urinal next to me. Nothing weird happened, but I always found it bizarre that he didn't space himself out better. That's a man code violation. Went to the Utah concert in LA a couple years back and saw Pierce Brosnan walking through the parking lot of the Forum. As I walked by, I said, "Bond, James Bond." He gave me the most revolting look and said freaking wanker. Totally made my day. My sister ran into Matthew McConaughey in a bar years ago. They hit it off and they went back to her place. She got overwhelmed by nerves and said she had to go run out to her car to get something. She sat in her car freaking out for God knows how long until he eventually gave up and left. Must have baffled the poor guy. Did a gig with the band Less Than Jake many years ago as a sound guy. They arrived at the venue, bigger than life, promising the whole local crew would have a great time, and at the end of the night, beer and blowjobs for all. Can't beat that, right? Show ends, trucks loaded, singer is still hanging around, and I walk up to him. He gives me a big hug and says something like, "Didn't I tell you it'd be a good time? Didn't I promise?" In fact it had. It was a good night. But I turned to my new best friend and said it was, but I don't drink and my deck's still in my pants. This place is pretty empty and I'm here hugging you, Chris, the singer. Isn't a particularly large guy. I am. There was a moment of absolute fear in his eyes as I hugged him tighter until he realized I was just kidding. We ended our embrace. They got into their bus and away they went. Fast forward almost a year. Less Than Jake is playing the Warped Tour and I'm in the crowd. During their set, Chris and I make eye contact. And he remembers me. How do I know? He proceeds to yell into his mic, "Hey, somebody suck that guy's dick," and then point at me while pretending to blow his microphone. I'm still a fan. Saw Tim Allen's mistress sprinting out of his trailer after his wife showed up at the set of one of those Santa Claus movies he was filming. Heard German soccer stars Mark Rios and Mario Götze talking about butt fricking 17-year-olds in a restroom of a club in Munich. They didn't see me as I was taking a dump in the stall. I was working in a New York City restaurant and seen Lennon and Charlotte Kemp Mull came in, very under the influence of something. They were actually super nice, but as the evening wore on, Charlotte's shirt fell all the way open and her bob was just out for like half an hour, and they didn't seem to notice. Other patrons were staring. Management was having whispered, "Do we tell her?" conversations. Finally our most gloriously Brooklyn waitress walked over and said, "Yo ma, yeah it's out." Charlotte politely thanked her and put it away. I have been handed weed by numerous musicians leaving the hotel I worked at. Snoop, Angus Stone, one of the Blink 182 guys, etc. Las Vegas. I'm eating lunch with my mother when I spotted Wayne Brady also eating lunch with his mother. I waited until he finished eating before asking for a photograph. iPhones were still fairly new and my sweet mother had never really used one, so as Wayne Brady and I were posing for the picture, my mother kept pressed the home button to take it. I quickly pulled the camera back up and posed again. She pressed the home button again. Once more I opened the camera app and this time Wayne Brady nicely explained that you have to press the button on the screen for the picture. You guessed it, my mother pressed the home button again. So I thought it'd be funny and chime in with, "Is Wayne Brady gonna have to choke a beach?" No one laughed. It was Mother's Day. My mom didn't know the reference. Got the picture at least. Wayne Brady was a very nice. I rode in a hotel elevator with Red Sox pitcher Derek Lowe at like 2 in the morning while he was making out with 2 women at the same time. I worked my way through college as a waiter in a gourmet room in Las Vegas. I became acquainted with Florence Henderson RIP, and she would ask to sit in my station. One evening she had a guest, Joan Rivers, me. Henderson had a favorite wine, Peace Porter, that she always ordered. It just so happened that on our wine list, that wine was labeled as #69. That's how she ordered it. "I'll have a bottle of 69. On this night, I approached the table, introduced myself to Ms. Rivers and made the usual small talk. Then I asked, "So Ms. Henderson, would you like a little 69 tonight?" OMG. Joan Rivers went completely insane. She started screaming and yelling and demanding security to have me fired and arrested. And the whole time, Florence Henderson is trying to calm her down and explain. Long story short, the maitre d' put me in another area, and not long after I graduated and left that job, and I never forgot that story. This happened in 1985. I went to a pool party in LA around 2002 and there was a guy named Michael Bubble there. I don't think anyone had heard of him at the time. I remember meeting him only because my friend made fun of him when he introduced himself by calling him Michael Googly Moogly, which was a reference to a line in a Snickers commercial. For the rest of the night he was known as Googly Moogly. Later that night, I walked into the bathroom in the guest house and he was taking a shoot. I think it was about a year or two later that he became a big deal. This is actually from a director I worked with. In the 80s, he was hired as a backstage dresser for a Broadway show that had Patti LuPone in it, and it was his first show. I don't remember what the show was, but there was a scene where she runs off stage. He was instructed to stand right off stage and hold his hands out at a very specific position, which is common in quick change situations, where an actor might have to hand off or literally throw a costume piece to make their change. What actually happened is that his hands were in the perfect position to get 2 handfuls of bob. As she ran off stage she pulled her breasts out so that he would grab them. Apparently she likes pranking new crew members. I called Prince Harry a cunt when he was hitting on the girl I was seeing and he was plying her with expensive champagne. He said he'd get me a pint. He still owes me that pint and it's been 5 years. A guy walked by me at the airport as I sat waiting to board and kid you not farted mere inches from my face. I looked up. It was Bon Jovi. I live in Las Vegas and often see celebrities here. One time on summer vacation, while in high school in the mid-90s, when I was 16 and just got my driver's license, I was at the Forum Shops at Caesar's Palace with a friend and there was a crowd outside the Versace store, so we went over to see what was going on. Mike Tyson and his entourage were shopping inside, and they locked the doors for him. After a while they all disappeared into the back of the store and we realized from having had a part-time job at the mall they were headed to employee parking behind the store. We ran down the corridor next to the store and headed outside where his crew were loading up Persian rugs and shopping bags into a Range Rover, while Iron Mike was putting on a helmet and jumping onto a sport bike. My buddy and I start waving at him, and right as he makes eye contact my friend switches from a wave to flipping him off. Mike ripped off the helmet and started shouting obscenities at us while we ran back into the mall shooting ourselves. Probably not in the same league as other posts, but in late October 2008 I was in the rear stage crowd for a rally starring Joe Biden, and after the rally he was shaking hands with the crowd, and when he came to me, this exchange happened me, "Hey Joe, 4 more days, buddy." Joe yanked me in close, Joe Biden yelling, "Yeah, goddamned right." My mom grew up with Rob Lowe as her neighbor. She dated him in middle school, and they were apparently found making out in a closet at school one time. She says that he was one of those kissers that uses enough tongue to lick your vocal cords.